Now we're looking at live pictures from Beijing, where the Chinese premier is giving the nation's equivalent of a State of the Union address. Wen Jiabao says the country will tackle inflation and address widespread inequality over the next 5 years. Calls for change have been increasing in China in recent months. Wen has acknowledged discontent in the country. The speech that the president is making right now is at the beginning of the National People's Congress, which will start tomorrow, Saturday. And it's a Congress which will address the country's social and economic goals, which will be laid out for the next 5 years. And it will also look at lifting the living standards of working-class Chinese who've not benefited from the country's rapid growth over the last few years. Thousands of Iraqis have taken to the streets to voice their anger against a lack of basic services in the country. They held rallies in central Baghdad for a second consecutive Friday. They're also protesting over corruption and poor living standards. Further south, in the city of Basra, security forces used water cannon and batons against anti-government demonstrators. Crowds in Jordan's capital, Amman, have been demanding political reforms and a constitutional monarchy. But Jordan's Prime Minister has rejected the calls. The government made several concessions over the past month, but opposition groups say they don't go far enough. There's also been further unrest on the streets of Bahrain as protesters call for reforms there. Thousands of anti-government demonstrators surrounded the state television headquarters in the town of Isa. It follows clashes between Sunni and Shia groups on Thursday, the first direct confrontation between the two sides since the start of large-scale protests. To Oman, where hundreds of anti-government protesters have gathered across the country in peaceful demonstrations. They want the government to elect a new parliament, an end to corruption, and also higher wages. Our special correspondent filed this report from the Sultanate's second biggest city of Sohar. For his own safety, we're not naming him.
Friday prayer in Oman's second largest city of Sohar, and more than 2,000 protesters turned the main traffic intersection into a place of worship. The anti-government sentiment here in Oman differs from the rest of the region's turmoil in two key ways. There's been much less violence and much more love for their leader.
We are making this to support the Sultan, not to face the Sultan. This is another thing. We are just facing the corruption here.
Sultan Qaboos Al Sayed brought peace to Oman soon after taking power in a palace coup 41 years ago. He also delivered paved roads, a public health system and more women's rights than other Gulf countries. But like the rest of the Arab world, Omanis now yearn for more. Military helicopters buzz over the crowd, but there hasn't been a repeat of last week's violence, where at least one protester was killed by riot police, while a shopping centre, police station and government building were all torched. These protesters say they denounce acts of violence, but hope a calm, peaceful plea will be heard by their beloved leader.
If he did know, he will change, we are sure.
How long do you plan to stay here for?
Until all our demands will be achieved.
The role of the military is key here now, respected by the people much more than the police, but they have very little experience in dealing with civil unrest, leaving the days ahead filled with uncertainty.
Hundreds of thousands of people are arriving in Rio de Janeiro as the climax of Brazil's annual Carnival approaches. Celebrations are already underway on the streets. The keys to the city were handed over to the Carnival's symbolic head, King Momo. He then officially declared the festivities had started. The party culminates on Sunday and Monday as samba schools compete against each other in spectacular parades. You're watching Al Jazeera. These are the stories making headlines. In Libya, Colonel Gaddafi's troops have attacked areas in and around the opposition-held city of Zawiya, just west of Tripoli. Reports say at least 30 people have died, but the area remains under rebel control. In the capital, Tripoli, tear gas and rubber bullets were used to break up an anti-Gaddafi protest after Friday prayers, but later pro-Gaddafi supporters held a rally there. Protesters in Egypt have clashed with security forces in Alexandria after they tried to storm a state security building. This amateur video is believed to show police trying to get rid of identification documents inside the building. Witnesses say the security forces opened fire at the protesters, resulting in several injuries. The U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has condemned the killing of at least 6 female protesters in Côte d'Ivoire. She says incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo has shown a total disregard for human life. The man suspected of shooting dead 2 U.S. Air Force members at Frankfurt Airport on Wednesday may have killed more people if his gun hadn't jammed. German prosecutors have now issued an arrest warrant for 21-year-old Arid Uka. He's charged with 2 counts of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. The magazine in his gun is said to have blocked, which stopped another 6 bullets from being fired. In Peru, 3 young sisters were killed when their home was buried under a torrent of rocks and mud. Heavy rains flooded a ravine in the northern town of Moibamba, triggering the landslide. The children's parents were pulled out alive by rescuers. Their daughters were 10, 9 and 5 years old. 3 other people died in the town and several more are still missing. Victims of last weekend's mudslides in the Bolivian capital, La Paz, are receiving aid in makeshift accommodation. At least 50 people died when their homes were deluged following severe flooding. Thousands were forced to flee as buildings collapsed across 7 districts. Officials say it's the city's worst ever natural disaster. Real Madrid's manager Jose Mourinho is reported to have escaped a knife attack. The former Chelsea boss and self-styled Special One was attacked by a man armed with a knife as he signed autographs at a Spanish airport. The incident happened last Friday, but has only just been reported by Spanish media. Those are the latest headlines. The news continues here on Al Jazeera after songs from a lost homeland.
يموت البطل لأنه حياة، لأنه هواؤها وغيمها، لأنه ترابها وقمحها ويفرش المدى. لا يموت.
الفلسطينيين العايشين بالقدس عايشين تحت احتلال، بالتالي المسألة الثقافية والهوية الثقافية مسألة مواجهة من نوع آخر. كمان اللي في الخط الأخضر هم بيواجهوا